Okay, happy Wednesday, folks, and a huge welcome to today's LinkedIn Live. Over the past few years, the world of work has changed an enormous amount. Transformation isn't slowing down, and the way we think about jobs and skills needs to keep up. A skills-first approach will be crucial for organizations who are looking to compete in terms of attracting, engaging, and retaining talent and building a future-fit organization. However, time and time again, we hear from our customers and people we speak to in the market that implementing this consistently and at scale is challenging. I'm Ben Slater, SVP of Marketing here at Beamery, and I'm joined by Sultan Saidov, President and co-founder at Beamery. We're going to talk all things skills today. Hey, Sultan, how are you doing?
Hey, Ben, I'm great.
Super. So I thought we'd start off just by talking about some of the common challenges in navigating towards a skills-first approach. What would you say those are?
It's interesting how many organizations are at different points in this journey of being on a skills-first approach. And the challenges we see fall into three buckets. Definition: what is the skills-first approach? What is our skills taxonomy? What is our role architecture? Integration: we have lots of different systems in HR and talent. How do we connect them? And maintenance: the organizations that have gone through defining all of their skill and role architecture often find that by the time you finish defining, these are our skills and these are our roles, it's already out of date. Roles move too fast. And the way that we work in HR and talent processes makes it very hard to maintain. And so in those challenges of definition, integration, and maintenance, it's important to think of them side by side. The definition of what skills taxonomy you use and what role architecture you use is, before defining it, you have to solve the challenge of where are we defining it? Are we using an external library? Are we using one from a particular system? And then the integration component: if we've gone with a library, how do the different systems we use it? For example, if you're using a learning management system where you're trying to train people towards certain skills, how does that training map to your internal mobility systems or your mentoring systems and the way you use skills there, or the systems you use for hiring and assessments? How do you make sure that you're using the same kind of skills there, or where you're doing your job definition? So that's the most common challenge we see, getting off the ground and choosing which direction you go in, to either just run without a definition and run into challenges there, or try making those definitions and then find it's hard to integrate and maintain.
That makes complete sense. And, it sounds from what you're sharing that a lot of the companies, or a lot of the market is behind. Why is sort of scrapping everything and starting from scratch not a feasible solution?
The challenge with starting from scratch is twofold. The first is going back to the integration and maintenance piece. How do you define something that actually connects with your processes? If you define a spreadsheet with here's all our skills and all our roles, that might be a good foundation to thinking about something. But in the practice of what does it mean for our candidates? What does it mean for our employees? It doesn't necessarily move the needle. Your employees aren't necessarily going to have a different set of learning experiences. And that's because they too have to start from scratch. You'd have to then ask your employees, which of these skills do you have? And that's a really tough question to answer. The alternative to that is considering how you can understand what employees themselves are saying or managers are saying. And there's one organization that's been on this journey for 5 years that said that they've tried to get to configuring a skills taxonomy using both of those methods, letting managers evaluate their employees and their skills and their roles, allowing employees to assess themselves. And that type of process can build those foundations, but it very quickly becomes outdated, because soon after you've made some of those definitions, you'll have new employees, new managers, new roles, and you'll also have whatever definitions you've made ended up disconnecting it with your internal performance systems and learning systems. And so one way or another, maintenance is required. The question is where that maintenance happens and how it speaks between systems. And that really is the sort of biggest friction of starting from scratch. When you're starting from scratch, you increase the amount of work it takes to integrate those things and how connected it is. And some of that is made easier when you have end-to-end processes within a certain system that at least use a common language for skills and titles. If, for example, your learning system and your mentoring system and your internal opportunity system uses a similar framework, that becomes easier than figuring out how to connect that to your hiring processes, how you define jobs. But all of that requires a lot of maintenance and work, and starting from scratch amplifies that.
Absolutely. And I think, we're all seeing that this is an area of investment that businesses need to get right. Are there examples of organizations that are becoming skills first and are seeing success in this journey that come to mind?
There's a lot of examples coming to mind in specific slices of becoming skills first. One example that comes to mind in the sense of capturing thoughtfully the composition of their workforce and what skills they're hiring for, and starting to think skills first in their workforce planning, which really is the first step to making sure that something can work over time, is an organization called Amdocs, who have gone through a number of these cycles and learnings and realized that you have to figure out how to manage this information centrally and how to connect your systems. And they've made huge progress in starting to think about how they manage that in a dynamic way. Another organization that comes to mind is Unilever, who pioneered in many ways thinking around how to create skills-first centricity in their gig programs. And they've published a bunch of research around the efficacy of having employees think about things like gigs as a validation of skills and starting to map that out. Now, a lot of these journeys are pioneering journeys that show both the value of being skills first and what it looks like, but also the frictions. In both the case of Unilever and Amdocs, tons of frictions were learned and highlighted, and those case studies are starting to be discussed precisely around what makes it hard to maintain and how do you think about systems that can speak better together. But I think those types of success stories, both on the employee side and the workforce planning side, are starting to be pioneering cases for laying a blueprint for what a best practice could look like.
Absolutely. So I guess what I'm hearing is that friction is a pretty consistent theme when you're trying to create global consistency around the maintenance and management of a skills taxonomy that is going to help you drive the business outcomes that you're looking for. What is the potential for a universal skills platform or universal skill approach when it comes to helping organizations solve for this?
It's I think important to firstly start with a definition of what is meant by a universal skill approach. And going back to the sort of three categories of challenge I talked about at the beginning, the definition, what is our skills taxonomy? Do we use a public one? Do we use one that is predefined in our system? Do we make one ourselves? It doesn't actually matter which of those routes you take. Your definition of skills in your company is going to be different to what candidates have in their resumes or what they have on LinkedIn, and is going to be different in between your systems. If somebody completes that course in the LMS that I mentioned earlier, how does that update their employee profile? How do you make sure that whatever the course is automatically speaking the same language as the skills that you've defined internally? And so what a universal skills platform is an approach for interoperability of things that pertain to skills, whether it's gigs, courses, jobs, experiences, and definitions of skills, including proficiency and seniority and adjacency, that allows those things to be mapped. How do we know that one version of a skill, let's say product management, is in one system actually means the same thing as another version of that? Let's call it product management 101. How do we know that those two things are the same? How do we define which things in terms of skills or capabilities mean something from a perspective of seniority or progression? And also, how do we define what falls into the bucket of skills versus is something else? Skills are a really important currency that allows connection around capabilities and competencies and seniorities, but it's not the only thing that you're assessing for. There are so many other components in how you map out somebody's interests and somebody's preferences. However, the interoperability of skills allows you to connect what do we mean by a job in a skill-centric way rather than just a description, and what do we mean by mentoring and learning in a skill-centric way, and create a better connective tissue in terms of thinking about how do we progress somebody from when we hire them and assess fairly and consistently to how do we ensure we have a good lens into when we should even hire versus grow people internally. And that universal skills platform translation of making sure skills are commonly defined and automatically connect between systems is a really key component of allowing these other initiatives that focus on how do we use skills to come into action, and without the very difficult baggage of trying to maintain that over time and trying to manually map that in each system.
Folks, as you heard, skills is a huge part of how organizations are transforming their workforce, and there's real potential for a common language to be implemented across the organization through the utilization of the right technology. And if that is successful, having that interoperability between different systems can make an enormous impact on the different things that your business is trying to accomplish across talent acquisition and talent management. Our recent webinar saw that 63% of attendees were just getting started on their journey with skills. So if you're also at an early stage, don't worry. There's plenty of time, and there's a lot of thought and research going into the best way of setting this up. If you have any questions from today, please feel free to connect with Sultan or myself on LinkedIn or visit beamery.com to learn more. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.